Okay, we're here. Well, I'm very happy that we sorted out these little difficulties before we actually got started, because that would have been embarrassing. Okay, so we have a couple of minutes to go until 3, and I just wanted to say welcome to everyone and thanks for joining us again on this Sunday afternoon. Like I promised last time we spoke, the next time we speak, we're going to have a lot of very, very exciting things to talk about. And that's exactly the case today. So, obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the new Aeroplan has been announced in full detail. It's going to launch on November 8th, and we have about 3 months to think about, yeah, to just digest everything about this new Aeroplan, to digest all the details, to think about the strategies going forward onto November 8th, and to book whatever we need to book, and to think about what kind of credit card strategies we need to implement when the time comes. So today's session is going to mostly focus on the flight reward side. I think that's where a lot of people could use a kind of step-by-step kind of screen sharing thing that we're going to do, a little bit of a study session here. And yeah, I hope that many of you find it useful. I hope that, we're going to go for at least 90 minutes today, probably more, a little bit more, because there's just so much to cover. It's yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. We'll get started at 3. I just want to wait for more people to come in, maybe at 3:01, 3:02. Once we get about 100 concurrent viewers, we can get going. And until then, hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's got your drinks in hand, or maybe coffee in case you're actually studying. I'm gonna I'm gonna really nurse this one because I want to be clear-headed for when we talk to our mystery guests later on. I think you guys are gonna like that. I think you guys are gonna be very interested in our mystery guests and what they have to say. So yeah, let's get started around 3:01, 3:02-ish. Um, and it's nice to see some familiar faces, familiar names popping in. Somebody's got a question, will the session be recorded? And the answer is yeah, it's going to be available for viewing about 1 week from now, as with all the other sessions, of course. Yeah, everyone's super early. Everyone's really keen on this one. Hey, Stephen, you called me lucky, but I think that's doing me a great kindness because I, yeah, Lucky is an inspiration for us all for sure. So um, that's not me though, as much as I would like to be him. Um, and yeah, it's interesting because some super elites are gonna really like the program. Some are gonna say that they don't like the changes. So definitely a mixed bag. I think it's going to be a theme, mixed bag, because there is a mix of good and bad changes. Therefore, there will be a mix of positive and negative reactions. And that's actually the notes on which we will start today's video. I'm just going to go over all the pros and cons, all the winners and losers, etc. Steven, that's fine. I take it as a compliment for sure. Extra Adventure, Heather, thank you for your super chat so much. In today's session, especially, as you guys have seen on the website, I've had quite a few sleepless nights putting together all the information. It was, I think I was up to about 2 a.m. on the night of the launch to make that video, and then had to be up at 6 a.m. for the actual launch. So if you guys have found value in this week's content, and especially in today's live session too, then as always, I would really appreciate sending over a couple of super chats. That really helps, to support the channel and also helps to get your question a little bit of higher visibility. Of course, these sessions are obviously free, free to view, kind of like by the community for the community. So if there's a nugget of knowledge or a bit of information that you think this might save me, X amount of dollars in the future, then feel free to send over a little fraction of that X amount just as a gesture of thanks. And I would be very thankful too. All right, Andrew S., you said that you've got some questions to send in. Yeah, I think you'll find the session helpful too. Jeff Myers, it's a YouTube feature. Underneath the live chat, you should be able to, there should be a little $ button where you can actually support the channel with a bit of a contribution. And again, that's completely optional, but I would be very, 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 very grateful. All right, so today we're doing a live study session. I think we can get going now with our live study session. The agenda for today, and I'm gonna pull a fast one on you guys here. This is our agenda for today, and we're actually going very much in depth into our study session. We're gonna start off. I just want to cover, my first impressions, a few of the pros and cons of the new program. Now that we've had some time to digest all the details, then we're going to jump right into flight rewards. This is very much new for everybody, so I think many of you will appreciate, the step-by-step process of calculating the cost of an award. And we're going to go through those examples with stuff that you should book before November 8th, stuff that's going to be devalued going forward, and the new sweet spot. So stuff that'll actually be cheaper after November 8th that you should maybe wait to book, or they can look forward to booking many, many years, hopefully many years into the future. And then I really want to get into some of the more juicier advanced flight rewards. That's what I'm calling it, at around 3:30, okay? So that's where I want to jump into, Alex, I think Alex or somebody had a question about, will you be talking about like the super detailed 12 segment, 16 segment stuff? And yes, I will. Like that's, obviously what a lot of people appreciate about Prince of Travel is that we really get down into the nitty gritty details. And that's exactly what we're going to do because there are so many nitty gritty details to cover, ladies and gentlemen. And it's going to take a long time for many of us to actually fully grasp the possibilities and stuff like that. And even, everything we talk about today remains hypothetical until November 8th, until we get that online search engine where we can actually go and try things out for yourself. I wanted to get into some creative sweet spots is what I'm going to call it. Stuff that, I haven't actually covered in the post of this week yet. I'm probably going to formalize it a little bit in a post next week, but these are some new possibilities and new ways of thinking about Aeroplan, entirely new ways that we must all, start to get familiar with. Because a lot of what we'll notice with the new program is the conventional wisdom kind of goes out the window, a lot of it, and now there's entirely new ways of thinking about putting together trips and maximizing the program. And that's what we in this community need to do, right? That's what we do best. And we need to put in the time and the energy to actually understand all those possibilities. And that's what we're going to do here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's kind of what I wanted to highlight. Then at around 3:50, we're gonna have time to go over everything else about the program outside of the flight rewards. So credit cards, elite status, family sharing, any of the other features as well. Alex, you had a question here. You thought the online search engine is going to be fully available in 2021 instead of November. So what's happening here is the simple one-ways and round trips and probably like a simple multi-city is still going to be available in November. And then later in 2021 is where we get that super powerful online search engine. That's what we've been promised, an online custom itinerary search engine where we can actually, we can actually search for everything we need to search and piece it together and do it all online. So 350, everything else, credit cards, elite, 410, mystery guests. We're gonna have two mystery guests on today. Yeah, if you guys are interested in, I think you'll be very interested in who the mystery guests are. Since everybody's here, I'm just gonna go ahead and reveal who the mystery guests are. Mystery guests are gonna be Mr. Mark Nasr and Mr. Scott O'Leary. So two of the guys who work at Air Canada, who work on making the Aeroplan program, we're gonna bring them on today and we're gonna grill them, okay, about the new program. We're gonna have we're going to ask them any questions. They've agreed that we can ask them any questions as they want because they're proud of the program and they're ready to, have nothing to hide. And I have some questions prepared for them. And any questions that you guys send in on today's chat, I will also take into account, and I will be able to put them on the hot seat, put them on the spot, and yeah, and extract, the answers from them. So I hope you guys find this interesting, and I hope you guys, make the most of this opportunity. Please do send in your questions, and I'll take note of them, and I'll bring them with me when I chat with Mark and Scott at 4:10 for 20 minutes, and then conclusion at 4:30. So obviously, I think we'll still have tons of questions, and I'm happy honestly to go until 4:45 or even 5 because this is a major milestone here in Canada, here for all Aeroplan users, obviously, and I think we're gonna have lots to talk about. So that's the agenda. I think people are super happy about getting to grill our esteemed guests, but also they designed the program. We're gonna have lots of questions for them, so I'm also looking forward to that. But for now, let's jump into our actual agenda here. We have until 3:15. Then we're going to get started with flight rewards. So I'm going to give you a few of my first impressions. I think it's very clearly, we're seeing a very even mix, I would say, of positive and negative changes. Okay, even mix. Some people might not think it's even, but overall, I think if we were to look at the big picture, we can kind of agree that there are positive things, there are negative things. The big negative change, obviously, a very broad increase in the award costs for many different types of awards, right? Economy class, business class, first class, pretty much all increasing. The way that the new flight rewards have been structured, making it going to 4 zones with 10 different charts, and then distance bands within each of those zones. That results in some pretty steep increases for a lot of popular awards, especially in the Atlantic zone. So especially things like South Africa, Maldives, and India. So that's the big negative, right? I think we've all had to grapple with that and come to terms with that. And then aside from the big negative, we've also got a $39 partner booking fee, which is kind of like a resort fee in the sense that you're still obviously getting good value if you're redeeming for business class. If you're redeeming for economy class, it's going to be another little bit of a pain, right? Because the value in economy is already not great, and then you have to pay this partner booking fee. So that's a negative. What other negatives are there? I think the big one is obviously the devaluation. Let's call it what it is. Steven I'm just gonna, oh, by the way, everything is interactive. So feel free to keep asking questions. If I spot them, I'll answer them. Even if it's related to everything else here, if it's a quick answer, I'll give you an answer. Otherwise, save it for that slot in the agenda. And when we're doing our examples, feel free to shout out your own proposed routes and itineraries, and we will, I can use it in the examples. If you guys don't have examples, I'll just use my own. All right, so where were we? So those are the negatives, and over on the positive side, no fuel surcharges. That's huge, right? I think even in our community, okay, we're very good at avoiding fuel surcharges and taking Swiss, taking Turkish, taking EVA Air, and skipping Air Canada and Lufthansa. Even so, now we have more options to fly Air Canada, to fly Lufthansa first class, right? Without paying $500 or $1,000. That's one of the dreams in this game we play is those first class experiences that private car transfer at Frankfurt Airport. That's kind of what makes a lot of this worthwhile. So that no longer comes with the fuel surcharges. That's huge. It's also going to be user. Speaking of the average user, I think we're just going to parlay this discussion into my winners and losers post. I think that's a good place for us to kind of begin talking about, or at least begin framing the pros and cons in terms of which Aeroplan users will benefit and which will have to adapt their strategies. So let's do that, okay? This is the most recent post I wrote, and this is my analysis of who's kind of the winners in this change and who's kind of the losers. So let's go through it just quickly, and you can obviously go read each one by one later on if you're interested. So let's kind of get rid of these ads on the side here, because obviously when you're browsing trends of travel, you should look at the ads as much as possible. But let's get rid of them for now. So I think Western Canadians are a big winner in this game, because in this new program, because they've got so many new sweet spots. And by new sweet spots, I mean awards that are cheaper than they were before, you know? So not just relatively good in the new program, but actually Western Canadians do benefit from a lot of new sweet spots. So for example, Vancouver, Tokyo in business class, that's 55,000 points now instead of 75,000 miles that it was today. Something like Vancouver to San Francisco to Tahiti, right? That's the same, 55,000 points in business class, if you can find that United business class space. Going to Auckland and Brisbane are 5,000 points cheaper in in business compared to now. So Vancouverites have gotten the lion's share of the new sweet spots, of the new redemptions that are cheaper than they were before. So I think people living in Vancouver and also Victoria and Calgary to some extent can be actually quite happy with the fact that they now have these new opportunities at hand. Obviously, if you live in those places, but you prefer to actually go to Europe, then you're still negatively affected. But the rest of Canada does not have this many sweet spots, let's just say. Another winner, I would say, the average Canadian traveler, right? Think about it. Like, how many times have you heard from your coworker, or just somebody that you're speaking about casually to, who's not actually into miles and points like we are? How many times have they said Aeroplan miles are useless because of we have to pay these surcharges, and because I can never find the flights that I want? Well, now Aeroplan members can access all Air Canada flights, albeit on a dynamic sliding scale kind of model, and there are no fuel surcharges. So it kind of addresses some of the concerns that are closest to the average traveler, who otherwise might just have gone with like their bank's rewards program, because these average travelers don't spend too much time thinking about what's the best way to go to this place to make my travel goals happen. They only travel maybe like twice or three times per year, and now it's in my view, it's very much more likely that they'll go with Aeroplan instead of all those other programs. So family pooling is a brand new feature. We'll talk about this more later on when we talk about everything else after flight rewards. But obviously, it's preferable for families of up to 8 members to be able to pool their points together instead of having to, in the past you would go to your, you would, you'd be applying online for your TD credit card, and you'd have to enter the same Aeroplan number on both applications, or you'd be at the branch and you'd have to tell your branch manager, okay, actually, please enter like the same Aeroplan number on all 4 applications if you're applying as a family. So now you don't have to do that, and it's a huge win in terms of convenience. In my view, okay, aspirational travelers such as myself, such as many of you, we're winning here, because even though some prices are going up, I mean, actually the majority of prices are going up, we do have the added flexibility of adding a stopover on a one-way. I'm very happy about that. I'm very excited to be able to add a stopover on a one-way. And just think about, like, in the past, we only had Alaska miles that would allow us to do the one-way, right? The one-way with a stopover. But Alaska insisted that you only book with one partner. So if you're going to if you're going to Middle East on the way to South Africa, like, there's no real way to do that. But now with Aeroplan, you have access to the full Star Alliance route network. And not only that, you also get Etihad Airways, Azul Airlines in Brazil, and who knows, many more to come, perhaps. Or I think there's at least one more to come. So like I said here, many exciting globetrotting possibilities await. And I think many of you will agree. So we're already a bit behind schedule, so I'm going to go through a bit more quickly. I think that the Aeroplan credit card holders are just about benefiting from the change, and I think it really depends on how much the premium card holders value the lounge access benefit, right? If you don't really value that benefit, $599 for the premium card is very steep, and I think that might not work out for some people. but I think just about the benefits outweigh the increase in fee. And even like I almost expect I would like to see some more benefits. Um, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think especially with the premium flights, I mean, sorry, the premium credit card, I think there could have been room for more of a wow factor there. Even though the Maple Leaf Lounge is already quite a bit of a wow factor. But yeah, I think this is kind of a borderline edge case, but just about winning. Next, we've got, okay, elite members. I think the mid-tier elites are really benefiting from these really innovative new features that Air Canada has rolled out. And what I'm saying here is like, and we talked about the negatives and the positives. I think one of the characteristics of the positive that make them so positive is how innovative they are and how some of these things we've never seen from other loyalty programs before. So chief example is priority rewards, which gives you 50% off any redemption for one passenger, but one ticket. Remember, you can combine 6 one-way bounds on one ticket, and this is something we'll go over later as well. This promises to be quite useful if you know how to extract maximum value from it. Even for the average member though, 50% off a flight just feels, it feels good. It has that feel good factor. So I think this will be very popular. Status pass as well. If you're a 50K or a 75K or a super elite, you've spent a lot of time away on the road away from your families, and to be able to gift that gift of status to your family members when they're traveling separately, I think a lot of real status members, so people who actually travel a lot with Air Canada, are going to really value this benefit. All right. And then just quickly, they're changing the fare earning structure. So now it's going to be based on the fare that you paid instead of the distance you travel. There are relatively few winners here, but the winners are going to be people who book domestic basic economy fares, domestic standard fares, because these normally only earn 25% of the mileage now. So if it's going based on fare, there's a good chance you'll actually come out ahead. And then obviously the high yield, so like people whose companies pay for super expensive tickets. That's whom the new fare-based structure is meant to reward after all. So no surprise there. Let's quickly go through the losers. People who live in Atlantic Canada, sorry, right? This is it's kind of because people in Atlantic Canada right now don't have that direct connection to London from Halifax and from St. John's, whereas historically they have. But now, because of the 737 MAX groundings and because of COVID-19, those routes are suspended. So anyone who needs to travel from, let's say, St. John's to Europe needs to double back through Montreal or Toronto, and that adds a lot of distance to your journey. And in a distance-based chart, that obviously penalizes you. So yeah, unfortunately for Atlantic Canadians, compared to before, you're still able to travel to, let's say, Mexico, Caribbean, and Hawaii cheaper than before, but it's kind of a unfortunate circumstance that you don't have that direct flight over to Europe. Otherwise, you would actually benefit from the distance based. So let's hope that those flights return sometime soon, shall we? On a similar note, this one actually, I also feel like it's a bit of a borderline case. Okay, so I think there are two offsetting effects for travelers based outside of major cities. The first negative effect is anytime you fly, so in the past, right, if you're flying, let's say from, uh, Thunder Bay to Toronto and then onwards to your international destination, you don't actually pay more miles for that Thunder Bay Toronto flight because it's all North America to, let's say, Europe 1 or Europe 2 or Asia 1. Now, because you have to always add that flight on, there are circumstances in which you'll be bumped up to the next distance threshold, and so you'll kind of be penalized for not living in a major city. That's the negative effect, and that's kind of like, there are benefits to living in major cities, and this is one of them, right? And I think the offsetting factor, and I'm not really sure which of these two are more important, and I think time will tell which of them are more important. The offsetting factor is that you can now use your Aeroplan points to access last seat availability on Air Canada. So right now, if you live in, let's say, Ottawa, and you want to fly to Europe, right? Most of Air Canada's European departures from Toronto are like 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. and the optimal, domestic flight to catch those are around 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. But those are also when all the business travelers are flying. So a lot of the times you're not going to be able to book those 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Ottawa Toronto flights with your Aeroplan points right now. In the future, you'll be able to access last seat availability. So yes, you will be able to book those. It's going to be at a higher cost because of this dynamic pricing. But remember, there's this weighted average pricing model, right? I think this is a little advanced for discussion right now, but basically it's based on the distance of the respective flights that you're flying. So if you're flying just that short segment, that's a high revenue Air Canada fare, and you're going to connect onto a partner flight, then since it's a weighted average and that flight is very short, your actual total cost only increases by a little bit. So like I said, two offsetting factors. Personally, my first impression is that the negative factor outweighs the positive, but time will tell here. Time will tell. Economy class travelers, um, my condolences, honestly. Like the old versus new, like the comparison chart between the prices is not pretty at all for economy class, and a lot of prices are going higher. And I almost think before, right, before the value in redeeming Aeroplan on economy was questionable. Now it's even more questionable. I think I think you'll want to compare closely against your other options like paying cash for the flight or using like some other rewards programs. We're going to do a little bit of a comparison next week between all the different rewards programs. We're supposed to do that comparison this week, but I got tired towards the end of the week, as you can imagine. So we pushed that on for next week. I saw somebody asking a question too about which rewards programs, how do they compare, right? I think you were asking about mini around the worlds, and we'll also cover that in that post. But yeah, economy class doesn't look pretty. So 25K and super elites, I've put them as a loser here. So for 25K, I think both of these are actually borderline cases. 25Ks, I really wrote this section with all of you guys in mind who actually never had status before, never really paid for travel with Air Canada, and got 25K status this year as a result of travel at home. And I think a lot of the talk on the town at the time was, okay, how are we gonna benefit from this 25K when the new program comes in, right? What's gonna happen there? What kind of new features are we gonna get? And I think 25Ks who kind of earned that status this year can feel a little bit left out because we're not getting any priority rewards, right? We're not we're not getting, we're also getting our benefits diluted a lot with the everyday status qualification, with grandfather, with like, legacy, diamond, black, and silver members also getting 25K. So all of that combined together, I think Aeroplan 25K members could expect a little bit more, in terms of what they're getting. But again, existing 25K members from before probably haven't really lost much, and they're probably going to benefit from this, what is it, preferred pricing on Air Canada flights, which is supposed to make a very meaningful difference in terms of the actual price that you see. So, like I said, a borderline edge case. Super elite members, I think, I'm not actually a super elite myself, so I can't really speak to how they feel, but I think they'll have mixed feelings. Some people are going to prefer to, they're going to prefer the new priority rewards that they get, which get you 50% off a business class redemption. And some people are going to say, okay, the older priority rewards are actually preferable because they allowed us to book, 90 passengers per year using these priority rewards compared to 5 to 11 this year, depending on how many SQDs you rack up. So it totally depends. I think there's going to be a bit of a mixed bag, like the wider public too. And I'd be curious. I think there's been a bit of chatter within super elites to in terms of how they feel. Yeah, like Steven, you mentioned that that you, even though you get fewer of them, the individual value is higher, and I think that could also be a popular stance. Finally, lower yield paid fares obviously are going to earn fewer miles now with the new program. It's a good thing that most of us don't actually earn our miles from flying with Air Canada, if I may say so myself. And then finally, inflexible travelers. Like if if you're upset by these changes, right, if you're affected by them, it's time to adapt. It's time to look for other ways to find value in the program. And if you're not able to do that, then you're actually going to come out behind, right? You're actually going to come out as one of these losers and these winners and losers. But if you can find great value in one of the upcoming sweet spots, then you'll be a winner that we've covered. Okay, that took a little bit longer than I thought, but I hope you enjoyed my summary of what I think are the winners and losers, pros and cons in the new program. I'm going to allow you guys to ask some questions for a few minutes, and just we'll switch gears over to the flight rewards after that. Alex, I personally hate the 12/16 segment limitations. Yeah, that is actually a tough one. Right now, it's going to be a limit of 12 segments compared to 16 if you have a single Air Canada flight on the ticket, right? Unfortunately, that's kind of what the limit is going to be. And then 16 segments is only if it's a pure partner itinerary. So you're right, Alex. If you're living in a non-hub city and you need to catch that Air Canada flight, it could very well be, book all your partner flights on the same ticket and add Air Canada flight at the end, and in that case you actually get more segments to play with. Ash, great thing to point out. So I wanted to also point this out, and now's a good time to do it. Because of the family sharing, and because Aeroplan is offering 2,500 bonus points to all new members who sign up now, actually it's the perfect time to sign up your entire family, right? Like every single person for whom you could plausibly sign up for an Aeroplan account. It's time to get them, don't sign up your dog or anything like that, because Aeroplan has said that, if there's too much abuse with the family sharing, then they're gonna tighten it up a bit. But they're fine with your aunt and uncle and grandma and grandpa and stuff like that. So get as many of those 2,500 points in as possible, and then you're getting a nice little head start on your new Aeroplan balance. All right, so let's jump into flight rewards. We're 15 minutes late, but that's fine. We've got plenty of time. So let's see. I wanted to start with, we'll start with our comparison chart, which shows you kind of, and I'm just going to walk you guys through, which awards are getting cheaper, which are getting more expensive, and then we'll actually go and calculate some of those awards on our own. So here we've got all the charts. There's 10 separate charts, as we know, for all the possible combinations of zones. And come on, Ricky, you talk too much. Look at all this. All right, so here's the comparison chart. This is because it's distance-based now, and because it's different compared to the zone-based now, we've actually done our comparison using 4 sort of control cities across Canada, right? And looking at the greens and reds and blacks, we can kind of tell like which rewards are getting better in price, cheaper in price, which are getting more expensive. So just very quickly, we can see that within North America and within the new North America zone, a lot of green, right? A lot of things like Hawaii and Mexico and Central America and the Caribbean, they used to be priced almost disproportionately expensively, and nowadays it's going down. I mean, in some cases, it's even very good. You've got 12,500 points direct from Vancouver to Hawaii, which is on par with the best sweet spots out there, right? So when you think back to like the average traveler, they like going to these places. 80% of Aeroplan redemptions are actually within North America in economy. That's kind of the stats. And when you think back to that, for a lot of Aeroplan members, this is going to be a very, very positive development. For us, okay, people who like to travel internationally in business class, ideally, it's not looking very pretty. If we look at the Atlantic zone, it's pretty much red across the board. We've just taken some sample cities, across the continent, across the whole zone, basically. We've taken some sample cities, and really it's only North Africa, which used to be priced disproportionately expensively, that actually goes down in price now. Everything else, like our friend Jamil here mentioned, it's going to be rising in price. Toronto, Istanbul is the example you had mentioned. Yeah, So economy is going up to 40,000. That's an increase of 7%. Business is going up to 70,000. That's a 22% increase. That's pretty brutal, but that's not the worst of it, right? If we look at Johannesburg, it's 40% and 33% in business. Same with the Maldives, very popular destination, very aspirational. It's going to cost a whole bunch more points, although we will actually go over a few strategies soon for softening this blow. But for now, yeah, the pure numbers are as such. In the Pacific zone, it's actually a little bit less bad. We see that some are remaining flat. For example, going to Beijing, going to Hong Kong. Some are actually getting better. Those are the Vancouver sweet spots that I mentioned earlier. So Vancouver, Tokyo for 55K, like for ANA business class, that's incredible, right? That's going to be one of the best sweet spots for flying ANA business class. Calgary, Tokyo on the Air Canada's direct flight too is I think that's either seasonal or they're going to bring it back hopefully sometime soon. But that's also, if it's a direct flight in Air Canada, no fuel surcharges now. So for Calgarians going to Japan, that's going to be awesome. Like, that's going to be amazing. Same with Auckland, we also covered that, but elsewhere in the region, it's not looking good. And then South America, similar situation. So mostly increases, small pockets of value going from east coast of Canada to Peru or thereabouts, but mostly red. So yeah, that's kind of the broad-based devaluation that we're seeing. And we're going to use some of these prices and kind of illustrate the process of finding the cost of an award. Let's do that. Let's see if people have any suggestions here. So Rocky, yeah, you're getting at exactly what we are talking about later. Just want to lay the groundwork a little bit before walking through one of those advanced examples. But since you said Maldives, let's talk about Maldives. So let's take a look at the let's say starting from Toronto, okay? Toronto to Maldives, the most direct route is probably going to be through Istanbul. By the way, guys, Great Circle Mapper is going to be an extremely useful tool going forward. Yeah, Alex, Maldives is in Atlantic. So yes, the answer is Atlantic. We're going to go over that. Great Circle Mapper is going to be extremely useful. I highly suggest that we all get familiar with it, and we'll also be doing a post soon about how to actually use this tool and maximize it and be as convenient as possible in looking for the award prices. But for now, simple example, guys. Toronto, Istanbul, Maldives, the distance. Okay, so actually, step one, here we have the flight reward chart. Step one is to think about the right zones. So as we've established here, Maldives is in the Atlantic zone. So what we're looking at, right, you can see it's right here. It's right here. So it's in the whole Atlantic zone, right there. So what we're actually going to be looking at is between North America and Atlantic. Sorry, I can actually expand this now. Between North America and Atlantic, this is the chart that we will concern ourselves with. We've noticed that the total distance flown is 8,855 miles. So what we do is we go to our charts and we look up the distance band, and that's actually going to be here. It's going to be higher than 8,000 miles. And so we see that, in business class one way, it's 110,000 points, as we had listed in our comparison chart there before. And what was the current price? We saw that it was actually 75K to go to Indian subcontinent. That's the current zone. So we're seeing, yeah, a 33% increase, which is tough to swallow, right? If you're planning to go to the Maldives next year, you better book that before November 8th. That's going to be one of many awards that people should consider booking before November 8th, keeping in mind that any changes made after November 8th will be subject to the new chart, not the old chart. So they're kind of closing off that possibility of loading up on speculative bookings. I can understand why they're doing that, because otherwise they're going to have 10 bookings per person. Just it's going to be a little bit of a mess there. So 110,000 points, that's one way. Round trip is 200,000 in business class. If we actually complete the round trip and think about coming back through, let's say, Singapore and then Taipei on EVA Air, then that's also distance, very high, 11,628. Same process, we go up here to 8,000 plus, that's 110,000. So 210,000 in total. If you wanted to stop over in any of these places, Istanbul, Singapore, or Taipei, that's going to be 5,000 points each. And you can actually have a stopover on each one-way bound, right? Which is something we'll revisit later. You can stop over in Istanbul and Taipei, and that's going to be 10,000 points, kind of a fee to stop over extra. So, questions. Somebody asked, is it possible to fly North America, South America, Pacific? The answer is that routing should be possible, but like Alex said, you have to refer to the circuitous routing rule, because if your routing exceeds 100% of the total direct distance, then it actually breaks into two bounds, and you have to pay for those two bounds separately. If that's confusing now, stay tuned. We'll answer your questions going forward. Jane, any North America stopovers on international one-ways? The answer is no. No stopovers in North America anymore, which means that you can no longer do stuff like, let's say, London, Toronto, Sao Paulo, and have a stopover in Toronto and make that two trips. They kind of closed that little opportunity. Like I've mentioned before, guys, the people running this program, they know what they're doing, and they're people who think exactly like us. So there's good stuff and bad stuff there, right? The good stuff is they gave us a few cookie crumbs to follow, which we'll cover going forward. And the bad stuff is like these obvious kind of tricks that people might want to do. They've done a great job of closing those off. Another obvious trick that people might have thought is like, Asia Miles style boomerangs, like this, and counting it as a one-way. The team was very explicit when they said, like, yeah, we don't want to allow stupid stuff like this. We want to allow people to, expand their routing possibilities while still keeping it logical, keeping the pricing logical. And let's just do one more example. Somebody said Edmonton to Buenos Aires. So that's Larissa. That's your example. And so I think the most direct route is going to be, let's do a few routes. So normally Air Canada has a flight that goes Toronto to Santiago to Buenos Aires. It's like a fifth freedom. Right now it's suspended due to COVID-19, but let's imagine they bring it back. When you have a fifth freedom flight, okay, I'm like 99% certain of this, the actual distance that counts is always the direct distance between the 2 points, as long as you're booked on the same flight number, okay? As long as it shows up as Toronto, Buenos Aires on your booking reference, not Toronto, Santiago, followed by a separate flight, Santiago, Buenos Aires, then it's actually this direct distance that counts as opposed to Santiago, as opposed to via Santiago. I don't have official confirmation of this, but I would be very, very surprised if it were otherwise. So let's see. This is obviously going to be following North America to South America zone. That's going to be this chart. And we have a total distance of 7,238 miles. And that's going to be this distance band. So 60,000 points one way in business, 40,000 points one way in economy. And that's increasing from, I believe, 55 and 30,000, if I'm not wrong, that it is today. And if we just try a different routing, let's say I'm pretty sure that there's an Edmonton, let's say Edmonton, Calgary to Houston to Buenos Aires on United for this Houston, Buenos Aires flight, which I'm pretty sure exists. So you can kind of see that this is like the most direct flight possible, right? Based on the Great Circle distance, but it's still above the 4,500 mile threshold. So unfortunately, the price is going to be the same, right? There's no way to like get this distance down below that threshold. I mean, the direct distance is already, 6,000. So yeah, you're going to pay this price no matter what. Okay. Take a little break, and then we'll jump into the more advanced stuff. Larissa, exactly. That's exactly right. So in this case, if you find space on the Air Canada flight, you're actually coming out ahead because you no longer have to pay, what was it, like $1,000 round trip on that Chile, Argentina flight that it was before, right? So I think we're a lot of people are going to be happy about the overall mix of changes. A lot of people are going to be upset about the overall mix of changes, and it all depends on your goals with your Aeroplan points and how much you can actually, how much flexibility you have with your goals. Somebody with a super long Japanese name says, what is it? America something Kaz. Ricky, you think this is possible? Haneda to Singapore to Johannesburg to Istanbul to Barcelona to Sao Paulo to Bogota. So let's see. I mean, we may as well give it a try. All right. Deadbolt 19, your question was, do we use the new charts for one-way distances only? Yeah, so it's all based on one-ways. Okay, Kaz, this question I'm going to save for later when we look at the one-way bounds, okay? I'm going to save this one for later. What's next on our agenda, guys? We've got, all right, let's go over one of the new sweet spots because we need to have a bit of positivity, right, to offset. We need to have a good balance here. So let's just go over like some of these sweet spots, like Vancouver Haneda. Look, 4,708 miles. So if you go down to North America and Pacific, that's just within that 5,000 mile threshold. So that's so satisfying the way that they've designed some of these distance thresholds to be, exactly on the borderline. And that's just, it's mostly satisfying for West Coasters, for Vancouverites, and people in Calgary. Another example, and I'm just gonna show you like the subtle differences here, because if you go to Brisbane, you actually save miles compared to going to Sydney or Melbourne on these Air Canada flights to Australia, right? Brisbane is the only one that's less than 7,500 miles, which is this threshold right here. So if you're flying the direct from Vancouver to Brisbane, you actually pay 75,000 points, 10,000 points cheaper than if you're going to Sydney, Melbourne, or any of those other places. And then we can also add like people in Victoria are basically living in Vancouver anyway, so they can actually add the same flight. Like look at that, that's agonizingly close, but still it's very, very good for people in Victoria. Let's see. Another one that I pointed out earlier is Calgary to Narita. That's the direct flight on Air Canada. 4,949. That's 50 miles less than this threshold. So people in Calgary, I think you've really got to take advantage of what you've been given here, and go to Japan with this sweet spot and make the most of that. Andrew, you had a suggestion here. So Toronto to Frankfurt, Munich, and Vienna, I suppose on Air Canada. And yeah, that falls under the distance threshold for North America Atlantic. So 4,000 is the threshold here. Actually, Frankfurt, yeah, Frankfurt is the one that's lower than Munich and Vienna. What about Switzerland? Let's see. Switzerland is just about, right? It's just about there. And maybe if you go to Geneva, yeah, Geneva and Frankfurt are kind of the two sweet spots if you want to access Europe for cheaper than other possibilities, and and get within this zone, right? Okay, so some people, Mr. Aaron Pan, are getting a little bit impatient, and they're like, we've all studied these charts to death on our own. So where's the advanced stuff? And that is more than fair, my friends. That is more than fair. So let's jump right into, again, 15 minutes behind, but let's jump right into it. Overview of bound logic. So quickly here, in the past, Aeroplan had one ways and round trips, right? And the award charts was based on round trip pricing. And actually, we can pull it up here. Plan reward chart. It was based on round trip pricing, and every time you needed to fly one way, you would just have to divide everything by 2. So these are all round trip prices, and to fly one way, you would divide it by 2, and that's kind of the basis. In the new Aeroplan, everything is going to be a one-way flight. So all of these are one-way prices, and every redemption you make is going to be either a single one-way flight or multiple one-way flights put together. So if you think about a round trip, that's just 2 one-way flights, one after the other. And that's how it's going to be priced. Like you're going to pay, we're going to do what we just did, the whole calculation for the first one-way flights, and then we're going to do the whole calculation for the second one. It's going to be called, actually, to be precise, a one-way bound, right? That's actually the language. So the first one-way bound, you'll calculate the price. The second one-way bound, you'll calculate the price. The third, fourth, fifth, or sixth one-way bound, because you can actually combine up to 6 one-way bounds on the same ticket now, we will also calculate the price. And if you do want to put 6 one-way bounds on the same ticket, it's possible. You just have to pay, all these prices added up, which can add up quickly. But think about, when the priority reward vouchers, you can actually get a 50% discount on all 6 one-way flights, one-way bounds at the same time if you have them all on the same ticket. And the other benefit is you would only pay one set of the $39 partner fee, as opposed to 6 if you were to book it separately. You would only pay one set of yeah, I think that's the only one, right? The partner fee is per ticket. Change fees are still per one-way bound, if I'm not mistaken. Cancellation fees, I think, are per ticket. So I may need to revisit that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Extra adventure, yeah. They can draw distance circles, and just so that I don't distract myself from what I'm doing now, look out for an article on princeoftravel.com where we're going to go through, all the features of Great Circle Mapper. I think it's the at sign, right? At 8,000 or something like that. Okay, so that's kind of the basis. Understand like the fact that everything's going to be priced on the basis of one-way bounds. Now, bound logic. Sorry, bound logic. How is a one-way bound determined? So if we go back to the example that our friend Kaz offered us, where is it? All right. So obviously, like, the Aeroplan's not going to let you, draw crazy lines with your flight paths around the world and call that one-way bound. Like, you're not going to be able to go, let's say Toronto to Australia to Europe to Australia to Europe to South America to Asia, and be like, oh, that's just Toronto to Pacific at 11,000 plus miles, right? That's the kind of stupid stuff that, like, it is kind of stupid if a program allows it, and they're not gonna make it so easy for us. So instead, there's a specific set of logic in place for determining what kind of routings are possible and what kind of routings are logical versus illogical, right? Circuitous versus not circuitous, backtracking versus not backtracking. And the logic that we've been given, the rule of thumb that we've been given, is something that we'll find in this post. So it's going to be a new generation of complex trips, that's for sure. We've been studying so much, and a lot of it is so new, and it's going to be a lot of new stuff for us to absorb. Let's just expand this. And this is way down in the bottom of the article where we talk about the logic for breaking the one-way bound. Here's how the logic works, right? We start at the first flight, that the first proposed flight. So to actually book something like this, we're actually going to be inputting the whole itinerary into the custom itinerary feature, first over the phone and then online starting next year. After we've input the whole thing, the logic goes through each flight one by one and treats everything as a single one-way bound unless one of these criteria are met. So let's just go through them. If you have a second stopover, obviously you're only allowed to have one stopover on a one-way bound for 5,000 points. So if you propose a second one, that bound will break and the next flight will be the next one-way bound. Obviously, you're not allowed to have stopovers in North America. So if it's the first stopover in Canada and the US, sorry, to be precise, you're not allowed to have stopovers in Canada and the US. You're still allowed to have them in Mexico and Central America and the Caribbean. But if you have one stopover in Canada and the US, which means a duration of more than 24 hours that you're stopping for, then the bound also breaks. Number two, an open jaw. Open jaws can only happen between one-way bounds. So if you're flying into, let's say, Munich and flying out of Frankfurt, that's what you propose on your itinerary, the bound will obviously break there. Backtracking to the same airport or country, that's pretty straightforward. Like if you think back to the current Aeroplan many around the world, you can't go through the same airport on the way to like a different So, okay, you can't go to the same airport on either side of your destination, right? We're all kind of familiar with that. And that's basically what this is talking about. So the one I wanted to focus on and spend some time with is circuitous routings. There's two general rule of thumbs, okay? There's the dominant one, general rule, remember, maybe it's not exactly this, but the one that we've been given is flying 100% more than the direct distance between 2 points. Anytime this happens, even if it's in the middle of your journey, then your bound breaks, okay? And we'll talk more about this with an example. There are also a few restrictions on the allowable transit regions. So you can't actually do Toronto, Lisbon, Sao Paulo on a single one-way bound. That'll be two one-way bounds because between Toronto and Sao Paulo, you have to follow Western Hemisphere routing. And they've actually answered our questions about these two examples, but I would like to get a full understanding of what's permitted and what's not permitted. So stay tuned on that, stay tuned. Somebody asked, is the North America layover time changed from 12 hours to 24 hours? I think it's still 12 hours. Let's go back to this circuitous routing and try it out with this example that Kaz has given us. And here's how it works, okay? The one-way bound, remember, checks one flight at a time to see if it can be included in the same bound. So first it starts with, I'm just gonna make sure that we have it here, yeah. First it starts with Haneda, Singapore, which is obviously fine as a one-way bound. That's fine, right? There's no reason that can't, in fact, the very definition of a one-way bound is that this is a one-way flight. So no worries here. The next one is Johannesburg. So the logic checks to see if this routing is circuitous. And the answer is, this is how you, by the way, get this little percentage to show up. Just put it kind of in this syntax. And you'll see that this is only 3.2% over the direct distance, nowhere near 100% over, right? So this is fine still. It still counts as the same bound. What's next? Johannesburg, Istanbul. So we add that here and see if this is over 100%. And it is. So, Kaz, my friend, this is where, when you propose this itinerary, the logic will say, okay, you can't actually count this whole thing as a one-way bound because when you're going to Istanbul on your way to Sao Paulo, this gets circuitous. This becomes a circuitous routing, okay, because it's over 100% and quite a bit over too. So this bound actually breaks in Johannesburg because Haneda, Singapore, Johannesburg, Istanbul just doesn't work. So it actually breaks in Johannesburg, and then that's one-way bound. And then Johannesburg, Istanbul starts as the next one. Obviously, that's fine. That's a one-way bound. What's next? It's Barcelona, and that should also be fine. We're just going to add a little check here to make sure that it's 22% rather than 100%. What's next? After Barcelona, it was Bogota. So I feel like that should be okay too. Yeah, that's 58% between Johannesburg, Bogota, and then Sao Paulo. That's actually, it might be too much. In fact, I feel like it's going to be too much. Yeah, that's way too much. So again, after this first bound has broken, Haneda, Singapore, Johannesburg, the logic tries to check the rest of it, and it's going like, all right, so you're flying like Johannesburg, Bogota is reasonable, but to go from Johannesburg to Sao Paulo with all this, with all this crazy routing through Istanbul, Barcelona, and Bogota is unreasonable. It's circuitous, right? It's backtracking. So that's why the bound then breaks in Bogota, and we're going to get rid of this little dummy thing we had there. And the proposed itinerary, Kaz, is actually 3 bounds, according to the logic, right? This is my understanding of the logic. I told Air Canada to read the post and correct me if I'm wrong anywhere, and they didn't correct me if I'm wrong. So this is, I feel like this is how it's going to work. Yeah, so, and if we zoom out a bit, right, if we talk about why this logic works the way it does, well, it's because they don't want to allow stupid stuff, or silly stuff, right? But they want to allow people to go, sort of in one direction as far as they need to between their origin and their destination. So this new logic opens up many more possibilities compared to MPM before, but it's not going to let you like zigzag as much as you maybe want on a single one-way bound. Obviously, if you want to do multiple one-way bounds, the opportunity. I think this was a good example actually because it showed us how the um, the logic there works. That's very, very good to know. Lastly, reaching a maximum of 6 segments. A one-way bound can only have 6 segments now. So if you have, there's no more like, booking a one-way to Perth with 16 segments and 15 long layovers and going out, leaving the airport in 15 different places to like have fun. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to pay for at least 3 bounds if you want to do that, right? If you want to do 16 segments. And then going back to what we mentioned earlier, the restriction on segments, 12 segments on a ticket if there's Air Canada involved, and 16 on a ticket if it's pure partners. Okay, so before we get to chat with Mark and Scott, which is actually soon, I wanted to at least get started on our flight, advanced flight rewards. So first one, first little creative sweet spot, Avios style, sorry, I don't know why that keeps happening. Avios style short haul flights. Listen, Avios has always been a popular currency for doing short haul flights around the world on One World Airlines, right? And I think we've all really enjoyed being able to do, say, let's say Cathay Pacific around Southeast Asia, or British Airways, Iberia, Aer Lingus in Europe, or maybe Qantas in Australia. And just those short flights are very generously priced compared to the cash fare sometimes. And now, because these flight reward charts have their new within Atlantic zones, within Pacific zones, and within South America zones, and the pricing is actually quite generous at the lower end. Therefore, we're actually going to be able to use our Aeroplan points to do similar short haul hops around the world on the Star Alliance route network. And that opens up a world of possibilities, right? Because Star Alliance flights cover a different route network compared to One World. So, I mean, let's just dive into a few examples. I mean, if we, let's say you're in, Frank, my keyboard's breaking on me. Frankfurt, let's say, Zagreb to Istanbul, and I'm gonna actually choose a more favorable one to start with, and then we can go to that's still kind of large. Let's see, start from Vienna, right? Okay, so this is a one-way flight within Europe. So Vienna, Zagreb on either Austrian or Croatian, and then over to Athens on Croatian or Aegean, right? And the total distance, that's less than 1,000 miles within the Atlantic zone. So this whole thing is going to be 7,500 points. And the fact that you can actually add a stopover in Zagreb, that's huge because you actually get to make this one way that visits 2 places for as long as you want. And that's going to be what, 7,500. Here we can actually use our notes here. 7,500 for Vienna, Zagreb to Athens, and then 5,000 points for the Zagreb stopover. And that's only going to be 12,500 points, right? Compare that to, you might be saying like, okay, we can always like use budget airlines like Ryanair or EasyJet to fly around in Europe. And that's true. But keep in mind that with the Star Alliance flag carriers, you're flying through the actual city airports instead of like Frankfurt Hahn or London Stansted or what else? Those silly European airports that all the budget airlines use, right? You're actually using the proper airports. If you combine it with your status, you might get lounge access. Or if you want to treat yourself to business class on these, it's still like, if you're swimming in Aeroplan points, it might make sense to redeem for 15,000 plus that 5,000 stopover, so that's 20,000. And you'll get lounge access the whole way. You'll get priority boarding, priority seating. Obviously, European business class is kind of lame. So I think a better example might be down in the Pacific, right? If we were to look at, let's say, Star Alliance's presence in the Pacific is huge. Like let's say Taipei to Hong Kong on EVA Air, 501 miles. That's under the 1,000. That's 8,000 points. If we can add something else here, let's say to Hanoi, maybe. Oh, that's awfully close. That's going to be over, you see? you're going to have to be strategic about which flights you put together, because it might bring you over to the next zone and it'll be a little higher. So if you want to stay in the first zone, just got to be strategic about what it is that you book. Maybe in this case, I don't know maybe what other flights go to, maybe Sanya, and yeah, Sanya should work. I don't actually know if there's a if there's an Air China flight between Sanya and Hong Kong, but let's just pretend there is, and this clocks in at under the 1,000 mile threshold at a stopover in Hong Kong, and that's only 13,000 points. So these are just two possibilities we've highlighted, but they're kind of insane when you think about it, because the Star Alliance network is so vast that let's just do one more, like in maybe a less common part of the world. What airlines fly in less common parts of the world? Let's say Mozambique to Johannesburg to Cape Town, I guess. Ooh, that's also close. But imagine if this were under 1,000, or even I think even if it's 1,000, over 1,000, then this is a kind of a steal. I mean, imagine that South African Airways is still flying by then. It's kind of a steal to get that for 8,000, sorry, not 8,000, 7,500 points with a stopover, without a stopover, or 12,500 points with a stopover. Obviously, in this actual example, it's over. So actually, if we put, I don't know any airports around there off the top of my head, but just if you work with me, this one would actually be 12,500 points, still very generous pricing. So think about it this way: compared to the current Aeroplan program, these would all fall under the single zone, which is East, West, and South Africa. That's 40,000. So compared to what you're paying now, which would be 20,000 miles one way without a stopover, you're actually going to be able to pay as little as 12,500 with a stopover on a one way. So obviously, that's going to be a very awesome sweet spot. Let's try a few that you've suggested in the comments here. Bangkok, Singapore, Bali. That's okay. So that's actually an example of a very generous pricing in this threshold, right? Because this might cost you, it'll either cost you a lot of money on Star Alliance flights, or it'll cost you a cheap amount, but on something like Air Asia, which kind of sucks, right? You want to avoid that if possible. You want to have the opportunity to redeem points at a good value for these short haul flights, and now you do, because now it's 12,500 in economy and 17,500 in with a stopover, and this amount in business. All right, guys. I think we're going to go over time today, but I think most of you will be fine with that. We've got about 5 minutes to go until Mark and Scott hop on here, and I wanted to get us started with strategic bound breaking. So I think one example can illustrate this pretty well, and what I'm going to do for that is, what was the example? I think I played around with it earlier. It was Thunder Bay, Toronto. So this is what it was. So somebody wants to go to a Thunder Bay resident. I don't know what the name is called for people from Thunder Bay, but somebody living in Thunder Bay wants to go to Istanbul and Tel Aviv, right? And stop for, 2 weeks in each place. So they're obviously like a little upset that the new reward chart is less generous than it was now, but they're happy that they get to have a stopover on a one-way. And so they price it out like this: Thunder Bay, Toronto, Istanbul, Tel Aviv. And the bound for them breaks in Tel Aviv, because that's kind of the point of turnaround of the whole round trip. And they're pricing it out like this, and they see that the outbound is 6,382 miles, the inbound is 6,356. In both cases, they're going to the Atlantic zone. So they pull up the award chart here, and they look at this one, right? Because it was, remember, 6,382, basically the same distance in both cases. And here we go. It's going to be 85,000 points per direction. And if we use that for our notes, 85,000 points, 85,000 points on the return, and 5,000 points for the stopover, and that equals 175,000 points in total for this proposed redemption in business class, okay? So that's Turkish on the outbound and Air Canada from Tel Aviv on the return. I'm pretty sure they run that route. Anyway, thanks, Dana. So T-Bayers. So this T-Bayer is wanting to go to the Mediterranean. Perfect. The interesting thing here is that, and I'm not sure how this will actually work in practice, okay? But the interesting thing here is if we were to break the bound here in Istanbul and actually count the second part starting from Istanbul as the return with a stopover in Tel Aviv instead. So you'll notice now the bound is breaking to Istanbul. Now the first bound clocks in under that threshold. The second bound remains in that same threshold. So look, 5,658 miles, that's in this distance band right here. This one, 7,079, is still going to be in this third distance band. So instead of paying two sets of 85,000, this traveler actually pays 70,000 points and then 85,000 points, still the same 5,000 points in the stopover in Tel Aviv, and that equals 160,000 points. So they actually save 15,000 points by kind of doing it in a creative way, right? Let's just get this down, get all the info down. TLV, YYZ, T-Bears. And this is going to end in Istanbul, and they're going to start there and go to Tel Aviv and like that. So you can see that this is basically the same trip. It's exactly the same trip. It's just about where you break the bound. And it'll be, I wonder if the new search engine will be smart enough to break bounds in the correct place or like the cheapest place for the customer, or if it's just going to follow like strict logic and be like, okay, point of turnaround, that is what it is. We'll have to see, right? We'll have to see how that works in practice. However, if the system isn't smart enough to break the bound in the right place and give you the cheaper price, then you just got to book these two separately as two separate tickets. And then what happens after that is you will unfortunately need to pay two sets of the partner. Here you'll need to pay two sets of the partner $39 booking fee, and everything will have to be separate there. I think I would love to see that the new search engine actually, if it does have that capability, I would be very impressed, honestly, because this is like pretty advanced. I mean, they've given us very advanced logic to work with, and it would be very advanced if the search engine can actually digest all this. But I hope it's clear here that if you break the bound in the right place, in some cases, depending on the distances, you can actually save points. And on that note, let's take a break and take a sip of my beer, and we'll get ready to speak with Mr. Nasr and Mr. Scott O'Leary, the guy who signs all the emails, on Aeroplan when they send emails to members. Mark Nasr. He'll be here to explain stuff, and we'll be here to put them in the hot seat. Yeah. Let's see what we've got. Okay, I think Mark is here. Mark is here. Let's see. Shall we welcome him? I think we shall. Mark, can you actually? I don't think Mark can hear me. Mark, can you hear me? Hey, one sec. Let me make sure that that the audience can hear you.
Hey, Scott.
Hey there.
Hey, Mark and Scott.
Rick.
You can hear me all good?
I can hear you all good.
Okay, perfect. Mark, Scott, it's a real pleasure to have you guys. On this live stream. It's extremely generous of you to give us your time here on this Sunday afternoon, and to engage with, what I imagine is the most engaged group of Aeroplan members that you guys are going to see, right? Interacting with the program in the years coming. So, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks. It's great to be here, and thanks for the time, Ricky, and to the audience as well. Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah, maybe we can get a few, maybe like 30 second to 1 minute intro from both of you in terms of how long you've been, working with Air Canada and on this program, and what is your background with maximizing points because I know you guys are both super into it from before.
Scott, do you want to intro one another?
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, how about that? Because I can't talk about myself. Well, it's not at least in unembarrassing ways. So Scott O'Leary, he's been in the travel industry for over 20 years. Actually started out at the Miami Airport Authority, and then what later became Amadeus, then Continental Airlines, United Airlines, and now Air Canada. Scott's led in a number of roles in the marketing, loyalty, operations, and customer experience spaces. He's done everything from in-flight entertainment to digital commerce, and he's been with Air Canada now, I think, for about 3.5 years. Yeah. And today, Scott's role is he runs planning and partnerships, as well as the overall program strategy for Aeroplan, and I call him the conscience of the program, if you will. Whenever we're debating ideas, it's really kind of just that sense that Scott has around whether members are going to think it's fair or not, and it's good or not, that actually ends up, being one of the big kind of drivers, along with some other folks of the program's direction. So that's Mr. Scott O'Leary.
Wonderful.
Wow, thanks. I should have recorded that. Okay, so introducing Mark Nasr. I've known Mark for better portion of 13, 14 years now. That's about right?
Yeah.
So Mark and I met when we were working together at Continental Airlines. Prior to that, actually, Mark had quite a bit of background in the travel industry. Actually, had worked for a couple other major hotel brands, and actually prior to that, was a graduate of the Cornell Hotel School. So Mark has served in various capacities, has always been a partner in crime, and we've had a friendship, both professional and personal, for all of those years that we've known each other. I think one thing that brings us together is our love for maximizing points, and our love of traveling and seeing and experiencing as many new airlines, new airports, new cities, new products as possible. Mm-hmm. And I think to this day, we find ourselves taking one of these trips together, about at least a couple times a year, and sometimes quarterly or more, because we kind of take a lot of pleasure as to how many places or how far we can go in the course of a weekend. Yeah. So Mark professionally has a ton of background in revenue management. He's run e-commerce for United. He's had a multitude of roles in various commercial sectors, ran strategy for United, and here at Air Canada, as you well know, runs both loyalty and e-commerce. We consider ourselves like an airplane. We foil each other actually quite well, and otherwise it's like an airplane with one wing sometimes. The way we think that.
Very, very, very cool to hear that, hear those perspectives from both of you. So listen, great introductions, but we're not here to just have friendly banter, right? We're here to grill both of you a little bit about the new Aeroplan program, because as you know, right, there's a mix of positive and negative. The feedback has been a mix of positive and negative, and I'd like to take this opportunity, because we don't get to do it very often, to get your perspectives on some of the negative things, some of the things that people might be confused about or unclear about at the time of the program launch. So if I may, the first question I had is about the new Air Canada dynamic pricing, right? We would love to hear directly from the source how that's envisioned to work in practice, and sort of what the purpose was there, and what kind of levels within that range people can expect, maybe a certain percentage of the time, and maybe what's the estimated impact of having the credit cards and the elite status on that preferred pricing?
Maybe, thanks, Ricky. Maybe I could give a few remarks and then hand it off to Scott to talk about the details. I'd say, first of all, something that I just want to make sure is very clear up front. from both a redemption and an accrual perspective, the new Aeroplan provides more value than the current design of the program. And just to be very clear, more value means lower prices in aggregate. Particularly on Air Canada redemptions. On the accrual side, even though we're moving to a revenue-based system, if, let's say, ceteris paribus, let's say we have the exact same flights from the same members and the same fare classes at the same fares, you compare 2019 using the old program and the new program, we would give, millions of dollars more worth of miles away for the same activity. So I just want to get that out up front to be very clear about it. Now, that being said, the programs are very different. It's not comparing, a red apple to a green apple anymore. It truly is, an apple to a mango. I'm trying to think something even more different than an orange. And, in such a, when trying to draw direct comparisons, it can be a little difficult. There's kind of two major things that we looked at as we were checking the new design. One was, how does Aeroplan compare? Does Aeroplan, the new version, compare to the current version? But the other thing was, how does it compare to the other choices, the competition in the market? And with that, let me hand it off to Scott, and he can certainly go through kind of the AC award chart and our thinking there.
Yeah, so maybe I'll definitely add a couple of things here. The first is, just to kind of emphasize Mark's point, there isn't a single, call it, category of this program that doesn't represent an incremental investment. Every single thing, whether you look at accrual, if you look at award redemption, if you look at our elite program, in every single one of those respects, we actually have put forth a net incremental investment. And that is above and beyond just the sheer efficiency of having Aeroplan and Air Canada together, because we are, by that very nature alone, without any net incremental investment, just in a better position to provide more value to our members. So maybe that's point one. Point two, I don't fully, I wouldn't fully acknowledge the point that we're going to a dynamic, we're going from a fixed program to a dynamic program, because I'd say at best it represents a hybrid. And I think probably the easiest way to line this out, and Ricky, I think you did a very good job of this in the video that you put out on the day that we went public. Current state, it's black and white. It's very binary. It's either the flight option is at a super low price, if that fixed space is not available, it's actually quite expensive. And if you were to compare it to the revenue price that you could buy the ticket for, it's a pretty low value per point. And what we're going to is, what we want to do is we actually we created some price variability at the low end, and so that's why you're going to see as many examples sitting below the bottom end of the chart price as you will to see slightly above the bottom end. And that's really to create differentiation between a 6 a.m. option and an 8 a.m. option. But by and large, you're going to see price points that are very, very familiar. However, if those flights are either filling up or during popular times or whatever the case is, we didn't want to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum. So we created multiple shades of gray, if you will, and price points that go up modestly as the flight is in higher demand. But all the while, actually, when at every single one of these award price points, I challenge you, take a look at what the retail fare is, and you're going to still see a very favorable value per point.
Okay, I thank you for your answer. It's really great to hear some more transparency in terms of the dynamic pricing. I wanted to focus in on something Mark said, right? Which is, okay, Mark, you said you're putting forth lots more value on the whole, right? In terms of the whole program, I think from your perspective, you're speaking from the vast majority of redemptions that Aeroplan members make, right? Taking that into account, you're putting forth more value. Now here we go. In our group chat here, we've got a community of very, very dedicated, right, like points people who hunt for the best sweet spots and are relentless in that hunt and love what they do in that hunt, right? We're all very passionate about what we do. So here we go. We've got some comments we're saying, and this is, I know you guys have to say what you got to say, but some comments are saying like for the best redemptions, a lot of them are going up, right? 30%, 40%, as you guys know. Let's see. Yeah, they're saying, Mark, you should be a politician. That's kind of the offhanded comment there. But hey, what would you guys say? Because I know you guys are the same people at heart, right? You mentioned that you want to like squeeze value out of your miles as well. What would you guys say to people who feel, upset that their favorite redemptions are going up in price and that, the value that they can squeeze out, maybe they feel like they have to work harder to squeeze out that value.
Sure.
Speaking from that perspective, outside of your Air Canada roles, what would you say?
Sure, I'll give a first answer to it. I'd say, look, in a bad program, there is little to no range of value. Okay, so like you get 1 cent off, your whatever, at checkout, per point, per 10 points, whatever it is. I would call that, I don't know, maybe bad program is a strong word, but in an uninteresting program, you have little to no range of value. In an interesting program which delivers great value, you have a range. And in any of these programs that have a range of value and deliver amazing values, there will be amazing values and there'll be great values and there'll be good values. So if the audience is looking at the new construct and is saying some awards are better than others and some deliver disproportionate, versus revenue fares or versus what's available, particularly with premium cabin inventory, I'd say, yeah, absolutely right. And, had we brought everything down to the lowest common denominator, then it would have gotten rid of those outstanding values for kind of everyday good value. And we wanted to do some combination of the two things, like create more predictability around the bread and butter of Aeroplan, which really is North America economy redemptions, while at the same time still having these amazing, especially aspirational, longer haul, premium cabin, so on and so forth, and create more flexibility around it. So I'd say that's point one. Point two is there's a lot of things that we've done to the program that will make it easier to use and easier for experts that extract the most value to get the product they want in the end, because we're adding more airline partners and the removal of the YQ surcharges. So if you were a member that only redeemed on one specific origin and destination pair for, let's say, One Star Alliance airline where we didn't charge a YQ today, yeah, absolutely, your average price could now have gone up. But the reality is that most of our members, not most, actually almost all of our members, across different spectrums of value and engagement, actually redeem for different things over time. Me personally, I redeem for exactly two things. I redeem for long haul, 3-cabin, first class, particularly Asia, Africa, and the Indian Ocean. And there's a lot of different O&Ds and carrier combinations and routings, and that changes every year, twice a year with a nice vacation. And I redeem for Chicago, Toronto, so I don't have to pay for my in-laws, to come when they visit us. And so even for me, who's very, very focused on value, there's still a very broad range of redemptions. One week it's one quarter it might be the Maldives, the next quarter it might be Bali, the next quarter it might be Phuket, so on and so forth. So when you actually look at a member across, those ranges of redemption behaviors over time, we're confident that substantially everybody, is getting off better here than they were before. If, however, I will admit, very clearly, if we have a member that's like just redeeming Toronto, Taipei, nonstop on BR, a couple times a year and nothing else, and that's what they were doing before, yeah, that price went up.
Yeah, maybe I'll add, Mark, you mentioned.
Scott, sorry. Scott, sorry. I think we've got a little bit of an audio issue. Do you mind, Scott? Sorry about that. Do you mind starting from the top there?
Oh yeah,
My bad.
No worries. Can you hear me okay now?
I think this is good now. Yeah.
Okay, great. No, all I was saying, maybe just a couple points to add on to what Mark said. First of all, I wanted to double click on Mark's point about partners. As you know, we are consciously adding more partners to the program. And those partners add quite a bit of richness to the program because, especially given that they're combinable with all other carriers, it just really helps boost up the overall chances that you're going to get a good redemption availability result when you're searching. And we think somewhat that future proofs our program. But the charts that we've come up with for partners contemplate and attempt to build in the flexibility to add in as many new partner carriers as possible, which is again a conscious priority of ours. Also, I think a good example of it won't be hard to find an example where you have a favorite redemption that's gone up in price, and it's difficult to look at those singular examples without discounting what the effective trade-off is. It could be for all the other use cases that you actually might be redeeming for, that you might be better off. And it might not just be on the basis of the points price. It might be on the basis of lower out-of-pocket payment at the end of your transaction in the form of no cash surcharges. It might come in the form of more flexibility, more redemption options, more predictability overall before you even enter into your word search. And that has to count for something.
Okay. Well, thank you for your answers, both of you. I think you're not going to convince everyone, especially if somebody's feeling aggrieved over they just want to fly Toronto, Taipei in business. They're right to feel aggrieved. I think they've got 3 months to kind of absorb that, lament that's going away, and find new angles to maximize. Right. I think it's natural that we won't be able to all see eye to eye here, but I think always having this exchange of perspectives is very valuable. Okay.
Sure, Ricky, if I could, one more thing. What I'd say directly to those folks, and I mean this very well, the few folks that you just described, also look at your other options in market. I mean, as I said, right, when we went through redesigning the program, we looked at how does it compare to Aeroplan of today, but we also looked at what are the other options available in market. And there were times where we said, well, maybe it's going to compare disfavorably in the minority of cases to the Aeroplan of today, but we still put on the lens to ensure that it compares favorably to market. So I can certainly understand, it being, a sigh, but I think it's just a sigh. It still, maintains a great deal or a very good deal of what before maybe was a fantastic deal. And we're kind of proud of where that stands. When programs have transformed, sometimes the trade-offs completely sacrifice one set of behavior to reward another. And in this case, we looked at the long haulers, we looked at the maximizers, we looked at the bread and butter folks, and kind of all the major redemption behaviors. And there still is something for all of those groups across the board. It's not as if, we went to a, fully, your mile is worth X cents and it's great in North America, but it's terrible on premium cabins, or it doesn't work with partners anymore, or, some other transformations that other programs have done in the last decade or so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll have a lot to digest there, and we'll make our peace with it, over time, and we'll be sure. Don't worry, we'll be sure to find sweet spots that you guys didn't expect, and have our little wins there. And as we always know, it's a bit of a back and forth, right? It's a bit of staying a little bit of a step ahead of each other, as you guys know with other programs too. So, listen, I want to be respectful of you guys' time. I just had, let's say 5 or 6 quick fire questions, shall we? Just 1 sentence answers from the crowd and from myself as well. All right. Yeah, there's been some accusations of long-winded answers, so that there's no more, there's always a bit of an element of adversarialness here. But I think
we're about a little bit more time if that.
I think the perspective is always
less suspicious.
So listen, what's the logic behind removing stopovers in North America? Let's start with that one.
Purely internally, we weren't able to get consistent alignment around it. We typically don't allow stopovers in North America on revenue fares. and the desire, was to have alignment with revenue fares. It's something we're looking at, particularly for international itineraries, to be able to do the stopover in North America as part of an international itinerary. But I don't expect that we'll be reintroducing stopovers on North American, or I should really say U.S. Canada, because you can Middle America and Mexico and all that, but on U.S. Canada itineraries anytime soon.
Sorry, did you say that as of the launch, you will be able to do a stopover, let's say in Toronto, for London, Toronto, Buenos Aires?
Oh no, I said we're looking into that based on the feedback we've received. We're trying to internally have the conversation to say we think that is legitimately different behavior.
Yeah.
So stay tuned on that. No promises, but I don't expect. I mean, to be very clear, we have no plans on reintroducing U.S. Canada award stopovers.
Okay. Yeah. Next question. What can super elites expect in terms of anything additional? Perhaps some were wondering about the bonus on their earned miles right now that it's revenue based. Do we have any intel on that?
Scott, do you want to, or should I?
Maybe I'll start. There's actually there's more to come for our super elites. We have not. We were very conscious. We were very conscious of the super elites, and it's. We believe that it is a very precious tier, and we want it to still be significantly differentiated from the tier just beneath it. So stay tuned in that space.
Okay.
And I just one thing that it's always hard sometimes to communicate a message. Just everyone should keep in mind when they're comparing versus the U.S. programs, Canadian dollars versus U.S. dollars. So that still puts us about a cent lower than for the super elites than where the US programs are at. But it's not, when you say, when people compare 8 versus 11 or 7 versus 11 or, whatever the comparison is, please remember Canadian dollars, not US dollars.
Of course. Okay. Next question. What do you guys think is the best sweet spot in the new program? AKA, which one will you be relentlessly exploiting for yourselves on your personal trips?
You go first, Mark.
Oh gosh. To me, it's North America, Asia 3, which is the band that ends at 11,000 miles. That's, I think, where a lot of my action is going to be, particularly with some of the partners we've announced and some of the partners yet to be announced. I think there's going to be a lot of joy there. And then the other thing I point out definitely is North America to North America. I guess I like the number 3, but the third band, North America to North America as well. I think, a lot of fun on that one.
Awesome. And Scott?
And within Europe and Africa and the Middle East and India, the lowest band within that region.
Right.
That's definitely helped big time with some positioning flights. Over there. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
No, your list was the same as mine until that addition, and that's exactly what I was gonna add.
Okay.
Those are fantastic sweet spots. For us, we're relatively new to Canada, and so call it the first and second bands are also going to be a particular utility to us just for domestic travel and short haul travel to the U.S.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I agree with both of those, most of those, and we've been talking about a few of them in our stream here today, and we'll continue doing that. And maybe we'll see you guys on one of the new possible flights that we can all take. All right. So a couple more questions. Is there anything you can tease about the new program? Because you mentioned we've only seen 60%, 40% left. Is it going to be positive, negative, maybe a bit of a teaser, maybe a bit of the teaser on the amazing sign-up bonus that we can expect?
It's all additive, right? Because everything we've talked about so far, let's say the 60% or so we've talked about so far, that's the Aeroplan of today, right? And so I think we've communicated on everything. I know, by the way, we're aware that we need to just clarify the benefits of the elite tiers. So we're going to do that in the next couple of weeks. There's by the way, there's no news. It largely rolls over the current program, but that will come. Anyway, maybe notwithstanding some details on the elite tier, which is mostly confirmatory, we've announced kind of everything as it relates to the Aeroplan of today. So I will say that what's to come really is new. And so this will be really exciting. Either it will be completely neutral or you'll love it. So you got nothing to lose. And yeah, there'll be all new kinds of credit card bonuses, which we think will certainly pique people's interest. And yeah, I think that's all I'll say about
Will
that.
serve our interests. All right. Scott, something to say on that?
Yeah, maybe I'll show a little more shoulder, just a little bit though. I'd watch the space of increased everydayness of the program. More to come in that space, and more to come around us rounding out the overall travel value proposition. We know, we see ourselves as we do see ourselves in the new Aeroplan as a leading air redemption program, but we think of it as a leading travel program, and so more to come as we fill that in.
Sounds good, guys. Well, listen, it's you guys have been very generous with your time. I know we said 15, 20 minutes. It's been about half an hour, and I've really enjoyed having the chance to chat with you guys. I'm sure that the audience has had a mix of enjoyment and fascination, and also some that are probably skeptical, right? Because it's not often that we get to interface with the opposite side, right? The actual masterminds behind the loyalty programs. And I just wanted to highlight that you guys have done a great job with transparency, as was promised since the beginning of the year. You've said that we want to be transparent with the changes, and you've given us 3 months. And from my perspective, speaking to content creators like myself, you've been more forthcoming than you needed to be with answering questions. And I just want to end on that note and say that can we get a public commitment from you guys to continue this transparency in the long run over the next 5-10 years, because trust is something that's built up over a long period of time, right? And sometimes we have some skeptical viewers in the audience who are not used to this, and I think they would really appreciate to hear that this is, Mark, you talked about a virtuous cycle before, and I'd love to hear if that's something that we can expect from Air Canada going forward, many years in the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some members of the audience seem to be skeptical about long-winded answers, as one person put it. So yes.
Okay. It's funny, Ricky. I was going to ask you the same question. Will you invite us back? Because we certainly love being here, and any opportunity you give us, we'll come back.
Yeah.
And look, to some folks, what I'd say is seeing is believing.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to launch on November 8th. And you'll be able to play around with the engine, the award shopping engine. You'll be able to see everything in action. And, obviously it will take us a few weeks post November 8th, probably to have everything, right and settled and all of that. But seeing is believing. And so, if you're skeptical now, even with all the information and commitments, then, wait until November 8th and you can play around and make your own decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, on that note, guys, everybody's very appreciative of your time. It can't have been easy, right? Facing up to the crowd's questions. And listen, I hope we get to do this again sometime, right? To continue this greater degree of interaction between the program and those who are most engaged in the program. I think that can only be a good thing in the long run. Have a great have a great rest of the weekend, guys. Enjoy.
Thanks, Ricky, and thanks everyone for your loyalty very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys, what did we make of that? I don't even know what to make of that. Listen, I almost need to digest, having these guys on as our guests and being able to quiz them in the hot seat. It's very new for myself, obviously, as well. And listen, I tried to, put forth our points maximizing mindset as much as possible. Obviously, some people are upset about the devaluations, and I try to pinpoint that as much as possible. And really, the truth is, these things don't exist in a vacuum, right? If we didn't have the devaluations, maybe we'd still have the surcharges. Maybe you as an individual would prefer that, but who knows? Others might not. So this is kind of the hand that we've been dealt here. And I think, like I said, like I personally have been very, impressed that Air Canada has been as transparent as they have been. They certainly haven't needed to be this transparent. And I think information that we have is very valuable as we learn about maximizing this new program. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys thought about about what yeah, some of them are political, and I know they were, and I expected that, and I think you guys should have expected that too, right? Because that's the way these things are, and you know I think we even even the people who are most eager to say, oh, these were a political answer or whatnot, I think there was some information to be gleaned in there. Specifically, I think I'm pretty sure I can share that um, that what Singapore Suites is perhaps going to be on the table. I know they're working on it. I know they're working on convincing Singapore Airlines to make suites available to Aeroplan. Don't go in with these high expectations, but I know they're working on it, and I would love to see that myself. And that's another example of the program kind of going to bat for its most dedicated members in terms of these aspirational possibilities. Anyway, where were we? We're nowhere near finished, unfortunately. And okay, yeah, I see the reaction coming in about Singapore Suites here. Like I said, no promises, but I know that they've been working on it. That's all I can say. So we're not nearly done here. I think we've got a little bit of at least a few more sweet spots to talk about, and those will really be the focus. Let's try to get through Atlantic Pacific arbitrage and the priority rewards, and we'll talk more about everything else after that as well. So Atlantic Pacific arbitrage. What do I mean by that? Yeah, Tryon, you've got that. Tryon, which new airlines could go to Pacific Band 3 in business and first? Exactly. Exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so let's go back to our Maldives example, right? That's what it was. I think, and I must give credit here to, um, who is it? Jean-Max and Frédéric from Milesopedia. Milesopedia are a French-speaking blog in Canada. They did a live stream where it was actually the first time this occurred to me, even though I probably should have realized it myself before. So I must give them credits. Go pop on Milesopedia's live stream every now and then. They speak in French, but my French is like okay, and I understood most of it. So they're pretty smart guys and great community there too. But anyway, I wanted to go back to this Maldives example because we calculated the award price, right? 8,855 miles between North America and Atlantic. That goes to 100,000 points. Now, we had concluded that, oh, that's an awful lot of points to pay. And the curious factor here is how can we save points? And the answer is, if we just added a flight to Singapore, this actually becomes very interesting because if we add a flight to Singapore, this is all of a sudden a one-way bound between North America and the Pacific zone. All right, guys? So instead of North America to the Atlantic zone, we're now looking at this chart, North America and Pacific. And remember what Mark said, the third distance band in North America and Pacific. You heard it from the man himself. That's the best sweet spot in the whole program. You're not really going to get better value than being able to fly up to 11,000 miles for 85,000 points. Listen, people who are complaining, right? People who are upset about the devaluations, you have every right to be upset, but we've been left some breadcrumbs. This is the biggest breadcrumb, okay? This is the biggest, way to maximize in the new program. So if you're upset about devaluations now, you better be looking at how to maximize going forward, and this is it. And why do I say that? Especially because, look, this whole distance, Toronto, Istanbul to Maldives to Singapore, is less than 11,000. So actually for this, you'll pay 85,000 points. And in case we needed a comparison, let's get rid of this from our earlier example. YYZ IST Istanbul to Maldives, that is 100,000 points. But Toronto, Istanbul, Maldives, Singapore, that's 85,000 points. And if you were going to do So here's where it gets a little more interesting, all right? Remember, you can have a stopover on a one-way. So let's make Maldives our stopover, obviously, and because you actually want to go to the Maldives, right? So you're going to make that a one-way stopover on a one-way. So we're going to add 5,000 points to this, and in total, that's 90,000 points. So you can already see that by adding this segment that you don't really need, okay, you're actually saving 10,000 points because of the difference between Atlantic and Pacific, between the relative generosities of these two charts. You're actually saving 10,000 points. And first of all, that's something I expect every one of you to look into taking advantage of if you're going anywhere in, let's say this, actually, let's go back here. So yeah, anywhere in like this whole zone, you can pull off this trick, right? Because you can always add another flight over here to the Pacific zone and end up saving miles just by adding a flight that you don't really need. The more advanced angle to this, and I know some people have to leave, which is fine. You can always come back and tune in later within 1 week's time, of course. But the more advanced angle, let's see. If let's say you originally wanted to do a stopover in Istanbul on your way to Maldives, right? So you originally wanted to stop in Istanbul and then go to Maldives, and now you have two stopovers on a one-way, and that's not allowed, right? That's a no-no, that's not allowed. So then what do you do? Well, then I don't recommend this outright, but one possibility is you could just do a stopover in Istanbul and then just book this with this flight within 24 hours. And then you just, you fall sick with a mysterious illness when you're in the Maldives and accidentally end up on your seaplane to your resort. That's what happens. And so, yeah, it's called hidden city ticketing, and I would not outright recommend it, but it is a possibility. And in that case, again, you would get your stopover in Istanbul, you would get to go to the Maldives and accidentally fall sick, and you would still save points. I hope this is clear to everybody. So this is what I'm going to call Atlantic-Pacific arbitrage. And this kind of softens the blow a little bit of the fact that this whole region here is being priced so unfavorably in comparison, right? Because you can always use this trick, get yourself over to the Pacific zone technically, and go from there. Let's take another example. Let's say Mac Daddy D, you had a question. So is it logical to go from Toronto to Singapore via the Atlantic? And the answer is yes. So let's see, the logic for this is a bit roundabout, but the logic for a logical routing is not too precisely defined at this moment, but you can definitely route from Singapore to Toronto via the Atlantic. That's no problem, and from the rest of the Pacific too. And I will follow up eventually, hopefully, with a full understanding of logical transit zones. I just wanted to go for another example here. What was it? If you want to go to Kazakhstan, let's say, if you want to visit the stands, right? This is gonna, okay, so again, this trick isn't gonna work in every scenario because it depends on the distance that you're flying, if you guys know what I mean. So I'm trying to experiment with something that will work. Does Winnipeg should work, right? Yeah. Winnipeg, and if you add on to Beijing, yeah, that should work. So let's say you're in Winnipeg and you want to visit the stands. So you fly on Turkish to Nur Sultan, which is the capital of Kazakhstan, and this is 8,000 miles to the Atlantic zone. Again, the same logic. You're getting to 100,000 points, and that's very expensive. So what was that? That's Winnipeg, Toronto, Istanbul, Nur Sultan. And now you just need to add on the flight to Beijing on Air China, and you actually end up with a Pacific redemption that's 10,427 miles, so less miles than 11,000. So you're in this zone, and you'll actually end up paying 85,000. Again, same logic. You end up saving 10,000 points if you don't want to play around with Hidden City, and 15,000 if you do. Again, Hidden City has its risks. One of the risks is that if you misconnect in the middle, they'll actually send you to your true destination, which is Beijing, instead of Kazakhstan, which is not what you want, right? If you planned, imagine if you planned a whole trip and you misconnected in Toronto and they were like, oh, we'll just put you on the Air Canada flight to Beijing instead. That's a risk you take when you do hidden city. So I wouldn't recommend that. Instead, what I would say is make this your stop and do things pretty much above board. All right. So that is Atlantic Pacific arbitrage. That's what my name is that I've given it, and I hope it gets your mind thinking in every kind of different direction. And what was the last one? Priority rewards. So, guys, priority rewards gets you 50% off every redemption that you make, and yeah, every single redemption. Obviously, depending on your elite status level. So we're going to go through a few examples. Let's start with an example that any status member, so a 25K or a 35K member could use, okay? Because as a 25K or 35K, you can only redeem your priority rewards on Canada or US flights in economy. So if you did want to maximize, my theory, okay, is that you could book something like Toronto, San Francisco, and then you could return to Buffalo and head out to back to Los Angeles and then back to Toronto. All right, work with me here, guys. I'm going to walk you through why I think this is valid and why it would be a good deal. So if you're in Toronto, going to Buffalo is like pretty simple, right? It's pretty simple. Remember, you can combine up to 6 one-way bounds on the same ticket. So even if we went through the definition of a single one-way bound before and that it would break if it's circuitous. But if it's circuitous, it just becomes a second one-way bound. And the idea here is you want to combine as many one-way bounds on the same ticket as possible and apply that 50% voucher to that ticket and save 50% on effectively 2 or 3 round-trip flights. That's the theory. Now, until we can actually play around with the search engine and book stuff, we don't know if stuff like this will work or won't work, but I don't see a reason that this won't work, so I'm going to share it today, okay? Now, yeah, so this is what's happening. You're flying out to San Francisco, that's one-way bound. San Francisco back to Buffalo is one-way bound number 2. And then this whole part is basically like you see that? Yeah, this part. This is like your first round trip out to San Francisco, right? So let's say you're going out in Labor Day weekend, all right? And then let's say you planned another trip across the continent to Los Angeles, maybe for next spring break, okay? Then you would start out of Buffalo. This would be your third one-way bound, and your fourth one-way bound will be the return flight from Los Angeles to Toronto. This part of it would be your second round trip. That would be your trip in spring break, and I don't see a reason here that this won't all be on one ticket, because you can remember if you cross through the same airport again, it breaks the bound, but it doesn't break the ticket. It doesn't actually cause you to have to book a new ticket. Aaron Zhang, how would you get to and from Buffalo? I don't know. Most people drive, I think. I've never actually made the trip before, but I think there are buses too. You can also do Ottawa. If you don't want to cross the border, you can do Ottawa and drive. But then you have to find the right flights to get to Ottawa without crossing through Toronto. And that's an important point, because I actually specifically asked Air Canada if a trip like this could be priced on one ticket. So Toronto, San Francisco, back to Toronto, back to Los Angeles, back to Toronto. And the answer is no. Once you go back to your point of origin, you can no longer add bounds to the same ticket. Does that make sense? So that's why we have to go, to a place that's not our origin as this kind of pseudo origin that we have in order to put it all on one ticket. And let's see, in theory, this is for one-way bounds, right? So in theory, if you wanted to, let's say, go to Seattle for like summer, or for Easter or something like that, then what you do is, again, make it a Buffalo trip and then Seattle, Toronto. So this is the maximum you could push it. 6 one-way bounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? This can be done by any Aeroplan 25K member or 35K member who has a priority reward. And the tricky part is going to be actually earning that priority reward. because you need to spend $4,000 in SQD with Air Canada to get it. That's going to be the tricky part that makes this less accessible than than everybody can do it. But if you do get a priority reward on your hands, or if you can convince a friend of yours that has extra priority rewards to lend you one, then the possibilities do stack up, at least in theory. Again, this is just to get people's minds going. So, good question, Ash. How many points for this trip? So that's the whole maximizing angle here. Okay, that's the whole reason we're doing this, because remember, this will all be, let's see, within North America. It's all going to be within this distance band, right? This third one. So each one will be 12,000, at least 12,500 on Air Canada or on partners. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 12,500. That's going to be 75,000, right? Points. But listen, if you apply one priority voucher to this whole thing, then the whole thing becomes 37,500 for 3 round trips. That's effectively what it's doing is making your single priority reward count for 3 round trips, and just being a little creative with that. And yeah, Andrew, your point is correct. SQD is the tough one for most people. But hey, it could be worth that SQD threshold. I mean, think about the savings. Now, for super elites, this is going to be even more interesting because super elites get to use their 50% off vouchers worldwide on business class. And so I'm just going to let your imaginations run wild for that one. But I will say here that I specifically asked if super elites are restricted to using their priority vouchers for travel for themselves or for their close family. And the answer was no. Super elites can redeem priority rewards for anyone. So it's all about who you know, okay? It's all about who you know and who you can invite to a few decadent dinners to make up for a 50% off. Imagine that, a 50% off voucher on your 6 one-way bound round the world trip in business class. That would be quite something. All right, time to take a sip of beer. Guys, so many of you are still joining us, even though it's almost 5. I really have to say thank you. This is so much fun for me, obviously, to really geek out for a lot of this stuff. So really, just thanks for being here. And I'm pretty sure this is the biggest virtual live stream we've ever done, and it's been a lot of fun. So let's see some questions. Derek. So you mentioned SQD for non-Canada residents is a lot less. That's correct for qualifying for status, but for earning priority rewards, that's the same SQD requirements for everyone. So you can't get a discount on that, and you're going to need to meet at least 4,000 SQD to get your first priority reward. Andrew asked, you asked about Air North redemptions. So there's just, I can talk, I can say a few things about that. Canadian North, Air Quebec, which is in Quebec, and Com Air, which is mostly based out of Manitoba, I think, they're still going to be partners of Aeroplan. Upon launch, Canadian North will be combinable with Air Canada and with all other partners. So that's actually a little bit of an improvement, because right now I don't think you can combine Canadian North with partners. But now, yes, you can. The other two, Com Air and Air Quebec, will not be combinable as of launch, but they're looking to make it combinable. Kunal, listen, man, I I really tried to nurse this because I didn't want to, I didn't want to lose my sharpness here. We're going through some really in-depth stuff. So yeah, this video will be available for people to play back over the next week. That's usually how I do it, and I think we'll keep it like that. And otherwise, I think we're done with our sweet spots. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really had fun looking at all the possibilities, and I'm pretty certain that there's still stuff that I've missed that I've yet to discover, right? So really the next 3 months or so is going to be all about pouring through every single page of that award chart. And maybe for you guys, maybe we'll do, I don't know, a few more of these live streams. Usually we do these bi-weekly, but not only Prince of Travel live streams, right? Also look at other people's live streams, read everybody's posts. There's gonna be lots of discussion all over the internet all over the forums. It's going to be a lot of fun to like really delve into all the sweet spots. And now we're able to let's talk about credit cards. Let's talk about elite status. For anybody who wants to stick around, I know it's Sunday afternoon. If you guys aren't busy, I'd be happy to chill for another, let's say, 20 minutes, and I can try to answer as many questions about about the credit cards as possible. I know some people were wondering, uh, when are we going to know more about? Let's talk about the timeline for credit cards, okay? We currently don't have that much information about the uh, new American Express Aeroplan cards, right? We heard from TD and CIBC. We don't know about like the American Express cards, like their earning rates. That's something we don't know. We haven't heard any details on the new American Express Aeroplan Business Reserve, which is supposed to be a super premium business card that doesn't exist right now. So I would think I would expect the annual fee on that to be like way higher, like maybe definitely higher than $5.99. That's my guess. I'd expect the bonus to be super high, obviously. I think we may as well have high expectations there because that's the only new card that we're actually getting. The rest are getting rebranded, right? So let's actually take a look at these snazzy new card designs, and we'll talk about each one of them, and I'll give you my impressions too. Yeah, so this is our post on the new cards, most of which are going to be continuations of current cards that people hold. So these two cards, okay, TD Platinum and CIBC, the base level Visa card. I really wouldn't expect much from these two. They're really, yeah, they're. I'd be surprised if their sign-up bonus goes beyond like 15,000 or 20,000. So we're just like, yeah, we're not really going to focus on these. Even when Air Canada was like giving out information, they just kind of glossed over these two, pretty surprisingly, unsurprisingly. Let's see. So the core cards, they're going to be priced at $139 going forward. Eric, you had a question about first year free offers. I think the only reasonable cards on which we could possibly expect to see first year free are these 5 cards, right? And in particular, these 3 cards are probably going to be the most interesting, because sometimes nowadays they do have first year free. They waive that fee and they say like, okay, here's like, I don't know, 25,000, 35,000 is probably the highest bonus we've seen, maybe 30,000. Listen, I can't give anything but educated guesses, but it'd be nice to see like 40,000 from this series of cards because I don't think they've gone that high before. And if we see 40,000 plus first year free, I think all of us are like signing up for all 3, right? Because that's a pretty spectacular deal. Premium cards. These are priced at $5.99 now, which is an increase from either $3.99 or $4.99. And I don't expect any sort of fee waiver on these because they are for the premium. They're supposed to be for high rollers, $200,000 in annual household income. So I don't think there's going to be a fee waiver there. I think the sign-up bonus, if I'm being honest with you guys, I would love to see a 100,000 point sign-up bonus. Might be asking for too much, and I might be disappointed, but I'm going to set my expectation or my hopes at that 100,000 point level because we've never seen that before in Canada, and these guys, TD, CIBC, and Visa, and Air Canada, right? They purchased Aeroplan for like, what was it, like $450 million in cash plus $1.9 billion in liabilities. So they're going to want to make a huge splash in the market. So that's my guess. Time will tell if I'm right or not, but I think we have a lot to look forward to there. And then the business cards. So that's a bit of an interesting like midpoint because these 2 cards aren't actually changing in annual fee, right? This is 149, this is 180. These cards actually regularly put on first year free. So, if I'm Aeroplan, I'm like, well, this has been first year free for a long time. Why not continue it and put out some big offers to make a splash? and the historical offers on these cards, since they're business cards, have been higher too, right? We've seen 45,000 on the TD Aeroplan. We've seen 35,000 on the CIBC. So, 50,000 I think isn't off the table. Again, all this is like speculation, but just based on my understanding of the history of these bonuses. Let's see some of the comments that you've got here. So, do you think Amex will allow the welcome bonus to previous Aeroplan card holders? I think for these cards, 1 and 2, they're probably going to say no, but in practice, who knows? Because it has not been strictly enforced. I know some people, for some people it has, or like in some instances it has been strictly enforced, but it has, as far as I know, it hasn't been strictly enforced. And then this bonus, everybody will be eligible for because it's a brand new card. So, and they're going to want to, hype it up and bring in as many members as possible. So I think we have a lot of bonuses to look forward to. How many cards would you recommend applying for when Aeroplan rolls out? Do you think I should apply for something now to spread out my application? So Sherman, if you apply now, you'll only get the bonus now, which I think we're all expecting that will be lower than the bonus in the future. I wouldn't recommend applying for any of these cards now, honestly. And actually, what I would say is, if you're not using the card every day, or if you don't, value the card a lot, consider canceling or product switching it so that you're eligible for the new sign-up bonuses when they come. Basically like position yourselves to be able to grab as many of these bonuses. As you can see, there's going to be tons when November 8th comes around. Let's see. Some people talk about when November 8th comes around, maybe instead of making a new application, I'm going to product switch to one of these new cards. What's my thoughts on that? I think actually that the safest way, listen, this is if the bonuses are as high as they're being hyped up to be, I think you want to be safe and you want to make a new application because the credit inquiry will easily justify that bonus, right? I think that with TD and CIBC, the product switching, like at least in my experience, has worked in general, but hasn't worked maybe 100% of the time. It's like sometimes I need to call them up and say like, hey, when I product switch over the phone, the agent said I would get the bonus. Why haven't I gotten the bonus? And then there was a back and forth over like many weeks or even a month. So I would personally want to avoid that as much as possible when it comes to bonuses, of this size. So I would say the safest move is probably to make new applications when the time comes. But you can always product switch away from your current cards so that you're no longer a current card holder. Then again, some people have held multiple of these cards at the same time. So really, it just depends on like how much you want to push the envelope. Whenever it comes to holding multiple of the same cards at the same time, it's generally it's not really something that I can recommend in good faith and say that okay, go and push the boundaries that way. But I know some people have done it, so that's all I'll say on that. So somebody asked, greasing some wheels at the local bank branch on these income requirements. So again, that's the similar nature, right? Online, if you apply and if you put an income lower than 200,000 for any of these cards, you'll automatically get denied. But in person, if you have a relationship with your financial services manager and you express interest in the card, maybe you're not too far off from that income threshold, and when you know the right people, anything can happen, right? It's kind of like that all the time. So that's kind of what I mean by greasing the wheels. It's always helpful to have solid relationships at every bank so that when you need to call favors in and ask for something, ask for maybe a bank representative to push something through on your behalf, and they can do it. And in return, like you might give them your business in the future, right? That's kind of how it works. What happens if you want to book a ticket prior to November 8th? The Aeroplan cards give you better insurance on the reward tickets. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess it just depends on how much you value that insurance versus the prospect of a new bonus. What I will say here is, look, there's 11 new credit cards, including this one. So you're not going to be short of bonuses to apply for. If you want to keep one of your credit cards around just for your insurance, that could be a very, very reliable strategy, right? You've got that base covered and you've opened yourself up still to the remaining 10 cards that you can get the bonuses on. So yeah, I don't think we'll be limited for choice when the time comes. Ash, what happens if you put a wrong income on your application? Well, if it's unintentional, it's an honest mistake, and if it's intentional, it's fraud. That's kind of what happens. Um, Jeff Myers, can you do a product switch on a card that you've only had for 2 months and then reapply with a new app in, say, January? Uh, Tough call, really. Product switching after 2 months, I think CIBC, I think for CIBC, I'm going to say they don't seem to care that much. Maybe give it a go. But, that's not something I would necessarily recommend with TD because TD, pretty sure they at least have the 6 month rule where if you open the account within 6 months, they don't let you have the bonus. And it's very much in the terms there. Alex, I'm glad you asked. Do you think the Aeroplan e-store will still be available after November 8th? Of course. It's all going to be, so that's part of, the e-store is part of this everything else category, like, minor stuff that we should still talk about because they're promising brand new ways to, I mean, you guys heard Scott say on the live stream, right? They're promising brand new ways to make the rewards more every day. So everyday earning is on the table. Um, eStore is part of that. So it's going to be a brand new, refreshed eStore, brand new technology in place. Listen, brand new technology on the eStore. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? If you know what I mean. So maybe it's time to get in some more eStore orders, or maybe the technology won't be as good as we hope. I mean, I'm sure they they like to promise a lot, but like Mark said, seeing is believing. So we'll see when the time comes what the eStore looks like. Eric, any details on the US co-brand? No details, but I know that one is in the works. That's I don't think any of the US blogs or you know YouTubers or whoever, I don't think any of them know either. I think that's something scheduled for later on. Stephen, any news on Star Alliance upgrade awards? Yeah, so they're saying stay tuned. They're saying they're not changing their pricing. So that's good if you're looking to book that EVA Air sweet spot on Star Alliance upgrades. So I think we'll have more, definitely going to cover it, right, when they announce it, when the time comes. Snowbird, will the new cards be a break from the old ones? Would they consider you've had the card recently if you cancel 1 month before opening? They will be a successor to the old cards. So yeah, they probably will consider it. The question is, how much do they actually care? Like TD and CIBC have never been, strict in terms of enforcing any sort of once in a lifetime limit. American Express has that language, but as we know, they're not that strict with it. That's kind of the state of affairs. All right. So, yeah, okay. Any US, yeah, we answered that. DM Traveler, does the 6 month clock with TD start from the time his account is open or closed? I'm pretty sure the terms say opened, so that's what I would go with. And what do you think about using Avios to get to Europe for 35K and Iberia Avios to get to Europe and using Aeroplan from there to save on air? Listen, I think to generalize that question, right? I think the new Aeroplan, because it's based on one-ways, the possibilities for combining with all the other like diverse programs out there have suddenly been expanded, right? So much because we can have a stopover on a one-way, we can combine that with the ability to have a stopover on a one-way Alaska award, for example. And that's like a pseudo mini around the world, but using two different currencies. So if you're, earning points in both programs at the same time, you can get to your goal, quicker that way because you can redeem like after half the amount of time. And that's just one example, Alaska. Then you think about the British Airways Avios multi-round the world. Sorry, guys, I'm getting exhausted. Multi-carrier award charts, and combine that with elements of the mini round the world, and that's Avios. Then you have what is it, Virgin Atlantic on ANA first class for 120K either round trip, or I'm pretty sure you can break that into JFK, Tokyo, London, or something like that, and make it an open jaw. So once you truly think about, combining all these possibilities at your fingertips to build the exact trip you want to take, especially for people who want to go to multiple places around the world in one go, I think the possibilities have been greatly expanded. And we've only talked about Aeroplan today. Like I said, we have 3 months to really digest all the possibilities that are at hand. And I think in that sense, we have a lot to look forward to. Yeah, just after we've stomached the devaluation and made our peace with it, then we have a lot to look forward to. Okay, guys. I think that's pretty much all the questions we've seen. So somebody asked CIBC Infinite Privilege. The fee will go up. Yes, going up to $5.99. You can ask for a welcome bonus as a current car holder, but you're not going to get one, probably. You might get like a goodwill bonus from a friendly customer service agent, but it's not going to be anywhere near as high as the potential bonus on a new application, which is why my recommendation is to make a new application as much as possible. All right, so I think I think that brings an end to today. We've gone for what, 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is, yeah, that's a lot of information to absorb. We've heard from Mark and Scott from the Aeroplan executive team. And like I said, I think those conversations are valuable. I hope that we'll get to have them again in the future, and that we'll be able to look. I'm sure it'll help us more than hurt us in terms of staying one step ahead of what the program is intended, right? And that's always what we want. Yeah, and we've gone over some of the credit cards. I think we've got more information to look forward to, both here and in terms of like the status and stuff that Mark mentioned. More information is coming. Stay tuned to princeoftravel.com as usual. And yeah, I'm going to sign off here because it's time to have some dinner and put my feet up for a while. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow, Monday, and another week of stuff to read and stuff to watch. Yeah. I hope you guys all get some rest too, because I'm sure you've all been busy studying the charts, and yeah, we can all go at our own pace, and I'm sure by November 8th we will all be very excited and ready to go. Okay, with that said, Oz, I'm gonna go take a nap, exactly. So yeah, good night, guys, and see you guys next week. See you guys next time.